Hater deploying bear spray at three opposite.
It is Sunday. Hey, everybody. Hello, everyone. Good morning, everybody. Thank you all so much for coming into the live this morning. This is your girl, Trey from Traversing, and it is Sunday, the first Sunday in the month of April, the second day in the month of April. And today, we are going to be continuing with our quest for truth, our quest for deliverance, if we may. Oh, my Bible. I'm just looking for my Bible here, guys. Make sure I have it in my hand. Yeah, so this morning we are going to be starting the reading of Nehemiah chapter 1, and also we are going to read the second chapter of On This Foundation. Yesterday, we completed the reading of the book of Ezra. And if you all remember, we said we were going to read the book of Ezra, we're going to read Nehemiah, and we're going to read the book of Haggai. Remember, Haggai the prophet, she was mentioned in the book of Ezra as having spoken during that time when Nebuchadnezzar had displaced the Jews, taking them to Babylon, and you remember that whole scenario. So we are going to read the book of Haggai, we're going to read the book of Nehemiah, and all of it, we hope, will help us to understand this book that we are reading on this foundation. So welcome into the live, everybody. Thank you all so much for coming. I sincerely appreciate each and every one of you. I see Cad. Cad is here. Cad, what's up? How are you doing, my love? So good to see you as always, my darling, as always. Thank you so much for coming. Bonjour, madame. Bonjour. Ça fait, ça passe. All right. I don't have enough light. Why don't I have enough light to be able to see what I am doing? No, say, age cannot take away my eyesight. And then again, I refuse to wear the glasses. So, y'all know how that is. But anywho, if I set my phone like that, and I turn on the light on my phone, I will be able to see. Fair enough, guys? Fair enough. So welcome into the live, guys. If you're just coming in, a very special welcome to you. If you are a newbie here, thank you so much for stopping by. Don't forget to hit that like button. And if you are a returning traveler, I want to say thank you for your continued support. So this morning we are going to read two chapters of Nehemiah before we read the second chapter of the book On This Foundation. Alrighty? Let us begin. The book of Nehemiah. The words of Nehemiah, the son of Achaliah. And it came to pass in the month Chislew, in the 20th year, as I was in Shushan the palace, that Anani, one of my brethren, came, he and certain men of Judah, and I asked them concerning the Jews that had escaped, which were left of the captive, and concerning Jerusalem. And they said unto me, the remnant that are left of the captivity there in the province are in great affliction and reproach. The wall of Jerusalem also is broken down, and the gates thereof are burnt with fire. And it came to pass, when I heard these words, that I sat down and wept, and mourned certain days, and fasted, and prayed before the God of heaven, and said, I beseech thee, O Lord God of heaven, the great and terrible God, that keepeth covenant and mercy from them that love him and observe his commandments. Let thine ear now be attentive, and thine eyes open, that thou mayest hear the prayer of thy servant, which I pray before thee now, day and night, for the children of Israel thy servants, and confess the sins of the children of Israel, which we have sinned against thee. Both I and my father's house have sinned. We have dealt very corruptly against thee, and have not kept the commandments, nor the statutes, nor the judgments, which thou commandest thy servant Moses. Remember, I beseech thee, the word that thou commandest thy servant Moses, saying, If he transgress, I will scatter you abroad among the nations. But if he turn unto me and keep my commandments and do them, though there were of you cast out unto the uttermost part of the heaven, yet will I gather them from thence, and will bring them unto the place that I have chosen to set my name there. Now these are my servants and thy people, whom thou hast redeemed by thy great power and by thy strong hand. O Lord, I beseech thee, let now thine ear be attentive to the prayer of thy servant, and to the prayer of thy servants who desire to fear thy name and prosper. I pray thee, thy servant, this day, and grant him mercy in the sight of this man, for I was the king's cupbearer. Chapter 2. We are on the book of Nehemiah, guys. Chapter 2. And it came to pass in the month Nisan, in the 20th year of Artaxerxes the king, that wine was before him. And I took up the wine and gave it unto the king. Now I had not been before time said sad in his presence. Wherefore the king said unto me, Why is thy countenance sad, seeing thou art not sick? This is nothing else but sorrow of heart. Then I was very sore afraid, and said unto the king, Let the king live forever. Why should not my countenance be sad, when the city, the place of my father's sepulchres, lieth waste, and the gates thereof are consumed with fire? Then the king said unto me, For what dost thou make request? So I prayed to the God of heaven. And I said unto the king, If it please the king, and if thy servant have found favor in thy sight, that thou wouldest send me unto Judah, unto the city of my father's sepulchres, that I may build it. And the king said unto me, the queen also sitting by him, For how long shall thy journey be? And when wilt thou return? So it pleased the king to send me, and I set him a time. Moreover, I said unto the king, If it please the king, let letters be given me to the governors beyond the river, that they may convey me over till I come into Judah. And a letter unto Asaph, the keeper of the king's forest, that he may give me timber to make beams for the gates of the palace, which appertained to the house, and for the wall of the city, and for the house that I shall enter into. And the king granted me, according to the good hand of my God upon me. Then I came to the governors beyond the river, and gave them the king's letter. Now the king had sent captains of the army and horsemen with me. When Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the servant, the Ammonite, heard of it, it grieved them exceedingly that there was come a man to seek the welfare of the children of Israel. So I came to Jerusalem and was there 3 days. And I rose in the night, I and some few men with me, neither told I any man what my God had put in my heart to do at Jerusalem. Neither was there any beast with me, save the beast that I rode on. And I went out by night by the gate of the valley, even before the dragon well, and to the dung port, and viewed the walls of Jerusalem, which were broken down, and the gates thereof were consumed with fire. Then I went unto the gate of the fountain, and to the king's pool, but there was no place for the beast that was under me to pass. Then went I up in the night by the brook, and viewed the wall, and turned back, and entered by the gate of the valley, and so returned. And the rulers knew not whither I went, or what I did, neither had I as yet told it to the Jews, nor to the priests, nor to the nobles, nor to the rulers, nor to the rest that did the work. Then said I unto them, He see the distress that we are in. Now Jerusalem lieth waste, and the gates thereof are burnt with fire. Come, and let us build up the wall of Jerusalem, that we be no more a reproach. Then I told them of the hand of my God, which was good upon me, as also the king's words that he had spoken unto me. And they said, Let us rise up and build. So they strengthened their hands for this good work. But when Sanballat the Horonite, and Tobiah the servant, the Amorite, and Geshem the Arabian heard it, they laughed us to scorn, and despised us, and said, What is this that ye do? Will ye rebel against the king? 20 and last. Then answered I them, and said unto them, The God of heaven, he will prosper us. Therefore, we his servants will rise and build, but he have no portion, nor right, nor memorial in Jerusalem. Welcome into the live, guys. Jojo is here, my love. Happy Sunday to you, Jojo. Jordan is here as well. Happy Sunday to you, my friends. How are you doing? So good to see you all. Thank you all so much for coming. Well, that is the book of Nehemiah we were reading there. We read the first two chapters. And we are reading so that we can get some context for this book that we are reading on this foundation. So we are going to also be reading the second chapter of this book. And let's see how we can connect the two stories. Okay? Before we go into our morning chatter. That's chapter 3. All right, so we are going to read chapter 2 of this book. I don't want it to wait too long and then you all forget what we read before. Because remember, we read chapter 1. You remember what chapter 1 was about? The same king. Remember, it was the same king who we just read about in the Bible. Artaxerxes. It was the same king in the book on this foundation. So now we're going to read chapter 2. Today, Chana found it hard to believe the words that the Levite temple musicians were singing. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. That promise wasn't always true. The desire of Chana's heart had been to marry Yitzhak ben Raphia and live in the home he had built for her. But Yitzhak was dead, and God could never grant her heart's desire. She shivered as a gust of wintry wind swept across the temple courtyard. It dragged gray storm clouds with it, and she felt the first sprinkles of rain. They needed rain. In fact, her nation was praying for the winter rains to pour from the heavens in steady sheets, soaking the cracked earth and bringing it back to life. But as quick as the spitting raindrops started, they stopped again, proving as worthless as the song's promise. The evening sacrifice at the temple was nearly over. Chana looked forward to returning home again and warming her wind-burnt cheeks, rubbing life back into her icy toes and fingers. She watched the priest remove a coal from the altar fire and carry it into the sanctuary. He would use it to light the incense on the golden altar that stood before God's throne room. As the fragrant aroma ascended to heaven, the priest would offer prayers for her people. It was the moment of Chana to offer her prayers too. But for what? Hadn't she prayed for nearly a year for her heart to heal so she could feel something besides endless grief? She glanced at her younger sisters, Judith and Sarah, standing beside her with their heads bowed. Judith's lips moved as she silently prayed. Chana wondered what she prayed for. What is for her? Another blast of wind rocked Chana, plastering her long robe to her legs. She had covered her wavy black hair with a shawl in case it rained, and she reached up to grab it before the wind whisked it away. At last the sacrifice ended. She huddled close to her sisters as they waited for their father to rejoin them. I love that song that the choir just sang. Don't you, Chana? Judith asked through chattering teeth. Chana nodded, guilt-stricken for having pouted the entire time instead of participating in the worship. She knew the folly of being angry with the Almighty One. Bitterness was a poison that had the power to destroy her. But on cold, gray days like this one, when the clouds hung over Jerusalem's mountaintops like a smothering blanket, her grief threatened to smother her as well. After Yitzhak died, she continued coming to the temple to worship God, clinging to a slender thread of hope. Some days, especially during the annual festivals, the bond that connected her to the Almighty One seemed as thick and strong as an anchor rope. But most days, the thread seemed gossamer thin, a spider's tendril. No matter how she felt, Chana remained determined to hold on to the Holy One and not let go, even when it seemed he had let go of her. Minutes passed as she watched the departing worshippers leave the temple courtyards. At last, Abba bustled up to them, his plump cheeks as round and red as pomegranates. There you are, my beauties. What a lovely sight you are on such a dreary day. Sarah stood on his toe. Sarah stood on her toes to kiss him, then linked her arm through his. We know you'd be cold, so we made soup to help you warm up, and we baked bread too. I hope it's still warm. Sarah was Chana's youngest sister, with hair as dark and glossy as a raven's wing. Thick lashes rimmed her wide brown eyes, giving her the innocent look of a child much younger than her 17 years. She and Chana resembled each other the most. Wonderful, Abba said. I do believe I can smell it from here. No, you can't, Abba, Sarah said, laughing. They crossed the open courtyard towards the western side of the Temple Mount, and as another gust slammed into her, Chana feared they would all be blown off the mountaintop in the wind. She wrapped her arm around Judith's waist, huddling close as they walked. Eudine was 19 and the independent sister, the one who didn't care if her curly brown hair fizzed around her face like a lion's mane, or her fingernails were raggedy and broken from moving stones and digging in the dusty earth to plant rosemary and sage bushes in front of their house. Not that herbs or anything else could grow without rain. They reached the steep steps leading down to the city, and Chana released her sisters to grip the handholds as she descended. Halfway down, Abba paused to catch her breath. You girls feed me too well, he said, patting his bulging middle. Let me catch my breath here. It puffed like smoke in the cold air as he spoke. They rested for a moment, then continued downhill towards their house, built near the ruins of the city's western wall. Chana hoped the coals on the earth had kept their house warm while they had been gone. She longed to run ahead to escape the bitter wind, but her gregarious father couldn't help stopping to greet people along the way. As ruler of the half district of Jerusalem, he always took time to listen to people's concerns and to share their joys. He knew who was ill, which families didn't have quite enough to eat, and who was the latest robbery victims here. The bad news always grieved him, but Abba also loved sharing people's joy. He savored every morsel of happy news in Jerusalem, from betrothals to birth to bar mitzvahs. Yitzhak's father, Rephaiah, who was ruler over the other half district of Jerusalem, worked closely with Abba. Once we are married, we'll reign over Jerusalem as king and queen, Yitzhak used to tease. Our sons will be little princes. And now he was gone. I'm going to run ahead, Chana told Judith, and make sure the soup is still warm. Abba had stopped to talk to Uziel, one of the goldsmiths, and Chana didn't want to get into a conversation with Uziel's wife, who always gripped Chana's arm like a vice grip, holding her captive as she recited a list of eligible men, including her youngest son. On any other day, Chana was happy to perform her social duties for her father, but not today. She hurried down the street of the bakers to her home near the Tower of the Ovens, named before the destruction of Jerusalem and the exile. You know which exile they're talking about? That's when Nebuchadnezzar took all the Jews from Jerusalem, took them down to Babylon. That's what she's talking about. No bakers lived on the street anymore, and the ovens and tower lay in ruins. Thankfully, the main room of their house was still warm, and so was the soup. Chana lit 2 lamps, spread a cloth on the table, and placed cushions and pillows on the stools and chairs so they could sit down to eat as soon as Abba and her sisters arrived. All 3 of them were laughing about something as they blew in through the door, as if pushed inside by the wind. "Close the door," Chana chided. "You're letting all the warm air out." "You don't have to shout," Sarah said. She didn't mean to. Chana helped her father remove his cloak and hung it on a peg for him. But instead of sitting down, Abba remained standing. He turned to Chana, cupping her face in his icy hands, and kissed her forehead. That's her dad, Abba. "Listen, my angels, it will soon be a year since Yitzhak was taken from us. Even if you had been married to him, a year is enough time to mourn. He wouldn't want you to grieve any longer. How he would hate to see you this sad." He caressed her cheek with his thumb. "And then Mama died. Didn't you grieve?" she asked, her throat tight. "Don't you still miss her?" "Such foolish questions you ask," he said, lowering his hands. "Of course I do. Of course I understand your grief. 1,000 times a day I am reminded of your mother. You have her soft brown eyes, Chana, and her generous heart. But you are only 23 years old, my angel. Your whole life awaits you. Don't the Almighty One say it wasn't good for man to live alone?" "Then why haven't you remarried, Abba?" "That's different. I enjoyed the gift of marriage for more than 20 years. And besides, who says I won't marry again?" "Have you met someone, Abba?" Sarah asked. She had been making such a racket, clattering the dishes and tableware, that Chana was surprised she had overheard their conversation. "No, my little cherub, I haven't met anyone." "Promise us you won't marry a Samaritan or an Edomite," Yudi said. She was taking the bread from the warming shelf above the earth, wrapping it in cloth so it would stay warm and moist. "Never," he said with a frown. "No need to worry about that. Not only does the Almighty One forbid mixed marriages, but Gentile women lack spirit. It's probably beaten out of them by their fathers. I like a woman who isn't afraid to speak her mind, like your mother, and like her 3 beautiful daughters, he added with a smile. China tried to brush past him and end this uncomfortable conversation, but he stopped her. All right, guys, what they're talking about, you see? Delia family, what's up? How you doing, my love? Welcome. Oh my God, how are you doing, Delia? How are you doing, my love? So good to see you. So good to see you. Thank you so much for coming. All right, so guys, you see, where I'm reading in this book. This is chapter 2. Now, you all remember when we read yesterday. This is how we are tying everything together. Remember, we read yesterday how the Jewish people were brought back out of Babylon. According to their law at the time, mixed marriages were prohibited. And when the Jewish people were displaced, were stolen, were taken into Babylon against their will, some of them ended up marrying Babylonian. Some of the men married Babylonian women and had children with them. Now, when King Artaxerxes agreed that the Jews should be brought back to Jerusalem and the temple should be rebuilt, these men came back with their wives and the children they had out of their union with these women who they called infidels because they were not Jewish. And at that time, they told them they had to send the women back. If they want to serve this God, this Almighty God, ever forgiving, ever loving, if they wanted to remain in good faith with this God, they needed to return their wives, and the children from those unions had to be returned to Babylon. So imagine if you were living in that era. Imagine you being a man, a Jewish man who was stolen from your land and taken to a different land. And you know what, as human beings, we are always going to interact to the point of romance. It doesn't matter. As long as you are in the same space, you are going to, and that is how it is. It's not something that we humans create. It was created for us and we were born into it. That's how life is. Sex and emotions and romance and all of that was created for us, and then we were born into it. So now when these people were in Babylon, of course, yes, there are beautiful women in Babylon. They're going to see beautiful women. They're going to fall in love. They're going to get married and they're going to have children. But now that the king has said that they can come back to Jerusalem and they are going to get back all their gold and silver and all those things that Nebuchadnezzar had stolen, they came back with their wives. And here they come back with their wives and their children. They tell them, you all have sinned. You have committed an egregious act against the Almighty. You all have sinned by having married these infidels and having children with them. If you want to remain in good faith with this ever-loving, ever-forgiving, ever-faithful, ever-true God, you must return your wives. So send them back to Babylon. And then you can continue to live your life over here, serving the God, our God. So this is exactly what they are talking about here. You hear they say here about the interracial marriage. I tell you guys, every time you hear of a law You remember back in the day, it was only some like 40 years ago that interracial marriage was outlawed in America, no? Was okayed, I mean, was okayed in America. No? Remember that before that, people had to be fighting tooth and nail. People had to be hiding themselves, hiding their husband and hiding their wives because them couldn't make nobody know. Them couldn't make nobody know that they were married to somebody who was like a black and white person. That was like an abomination unto America. All right, yes, that natural. Yeah, I said there was something wrong there. Well, we will see. We are going to read and see which God they were serving. Because imagine if I lived in that era. Excuse me. I'm sorry, guys. That didn't. Oh, sorry. It's still happening today in some cultures. Exactly. It is still happening in some cultures where it is strictly forbidden for you to marry somebody outside of your culture, outside of your race, outside of your tribe. It is still forbidden in some places. And you know it has its origins in the Bible. Same Bible. The same Bible. This here has its origin in the Bible. Because you see where the Bible says the men must send back their wives because their wives are not Jewish. All right. Need I say more? I don't think I need to say more. But anyway, we are going to continue. Let's read this again. Never, he said with a frown. No need to worry about that. Not only does the Almighty One forbid mixed marriages, but Gentile women lack spirit. It's probably beaten out of them by their fathers. I like a woman who isn't afraid to speak her mind, like your mother, and like her 3 beautiful daughters, he added with a smile. Chana tried to brush past him and end this uncomfortable conversation, but he stopped her. Listen, my angel, I'm not bringing up this subject to cause you more pain, but because it just so happens that I know someone who would like to be introduced to you. Oh, Abba, no, please. Just hear me out. He serves as a member of the council with me and is the ruler of the district of Beth Hakerem, about an hour's walk west of Jerusalem. House of the Vineyard? Sarah asked, translating the district's name. Are there any vineyards left in Judah after 2 years of drought? Your friend must be pretty old if he is a district ruler, Chana said. I don't want to marry an old man. Guys, remember back in the days? Even now, it's still practiced in some cultures where young little pitney them married to the old man them, get the old man them to come married and corrupt and defile the poor little pitney them. 12 years old, 10 years old. Mm-hmm. I don't want to marry an old man. He's only 37. I already asked. Abba, that's 14 years older than me. Yitzhak was 10 years older than you, Judith said. Chana rolled her eyes at her. Abba was relentless. He is a nobleman, and the fact that he has risen to such an important position on the council at such a young age should tell you how brilliant he is. Well, I can see that you are already an admirer of his, Abba. I am. He has offered some very wise advice during some of our council meetings, and I've never heard him raise his voice or lose his temper. Like several other members I could name. Who, Abba? Who? Judith asked, always alert for juicy gossip. Never mind, my cherub. I shouldn't have said that. He turned back to Chana. He's a landlord with extensive vineyards and quite wealthy. Some of his wealth is inherited, but most of it he earned by his own hard work and shrewd business skills. You should have a lovely home and servants to wait on you. And And if he is such a good catch, why isn't he married? Great question, Chana. Great question. Your dad is saying he's such a great catch and he has all these things. So why isn't he married? He should have been married already if he's such a good catch, yeah. Was he just waiting for me? Oh yes, Delia. Some of them married even younger. You never hear him raising voice or losing temper. Translate until he marry your daughter. Exactly. Until he marries your daughter. That's when he might go raise voice, raise hand, raise foot, raise everything. Let me guess. He's ugly as a toad. This China is something else. But she's right. If he's 14 years older than her, all right, the daddy is saying he is so smart and he has this and he has that, but yet he's not married. Yet he's not married yet. The only thing that's left is that he must be as ugly as a toad. No, I bet he's as short and bristly as a sack of straw. What a piece of hastiness. Sarah said, I think he I think he must be tall and spindly like a palm tree, Judith added, not to be outdone. It was a game the three of them played since childhood, watching people passing by and comparing them to objects or animals. Is the things kids do. Abba ignored them, still praising his friend. Well, he was married, but now he's a widower, so he's well acquainted with grief. He has two sons, around age 16 and 17, I think. So you want your young daughter to go marry this old man for being no stepmother? Abba, they are nearly grown. They'll never accept me as their mother. Abba exhaled and took Chana's hands in his. Well, my dear child, now that I've heard all your objections and excuses, you should know that I've invited my friend to visit this evening. You girls can decide for yourselves if he's a toad, a sack of straw, or a palm tree. Not for dinner, Chana said. No, just for a glass of wine before he heads home. Abba, and he's bringing the wine. It's from his vineyards. He has been bragging to me for ages about how wonderful his wine is, and I have been bragging to him about my three beautiful daughters. We decided it was time to put the truth of our claims to the test. Chana broke free from Abba, shaking her head. She strode to the earth to fetch the soup. His clumsy attempts at matchmaking annoyed her, but didn't surprise her. In fact, it was Abba who had convinced her to consider Yitzhak for a husband. He had sung Yitzhak's praises for months before she finally agreed to meet him, and then they had fallen in love. But it would take a miracle for it to happen a second time. Chana wished she could invent an excuse to avoid meeting their guest tonight, but her fierce love for her father would never allow her to disappoint him. Abba was a good man, a righteous man, down to the very marrow of his bones. She'll end up cheating with this one. She'll end up cheating with the sons. Yet, regardless of what this noble winemaker looked like, how wealthy or wise he was, Chana already knew he could never measure up to Yitzhak. It wasn't only her grief, she decided, that kept her from enjoying life again. It was the anger that refused to ease or go away. Anger at Yitzhak's murderers and at her own helplessness. If only his killers had been caught and brought to justice and punished, maybe then the rage that burned in her soul would finally be out. Chana, darling, Abba said, interrupting her thoughts, I don't ask much of you, but please raise that unattractive frown and put on a welcoming smile before my friend arrives. I'm sorry, Abba. She tried to smile for him, but she knew it looked forced, like a grimace. You're under no obligation to marry the man or even to like him, but he's a colleague of mine and I've invited him to our home. Her father had followed her to the earth, and she pulled him into an embrace. Of course, Abba, I'll be charming and welcoming, the perfect hostess. I'll even make some date cakes to enjoy with his wine. That's my girl. You haven't told us his name, Judith said. She and Sarah had taken their places around the table, and she patted the cushion on her father's chair, inviting him to sit down. No, they hadn't married yet. They hadn't married. They hadn't married yet, Kad. They were going to be married. She was going to marry Yitzhak, and then Yitzhak was killed a little bit before they got married. I'm not remember the exact time frame, but it was close to their wedding that Yitzhak was murdered. So that is why she's not with anybody now. And her father Abba had set her up with Yitzhak, and now I think he's trying to sneakily set her up with somebody again. Let's continue. I'll be charming and welcoming, the perfect hostess. I'll even make some date cakes to enjoy with his wine. That's my girl. You haven't told us his name yet, Judith said. She and Sarah take their places around the table, and she patted the cushion on her father's chair, inviting him to sit down. His name is Malkijah ben Rechab. That's a mouthful, Chana blurted. What do his friends call him? Abba smiled. They call him Malkijah ben Rechab. Chana's first glimpse of Malkijah ben Rechab that evening revealed that they had all been wrong about his looks. He was neither a toad nor a sack of straw, nor was he a palm tree. He was as tall as the door frame, neither fat nor thin, but sturdily built. He arrived with the promise of wine, wearing wearing a pleasant smile and a robe that had been woven from the very finest of wool. He proved to be quite charming too. He listened attentively as Abba introduced his 3 daughters, then said, I know when I'm defeated, Shalom. Your 3 daughters are much lovelier than my finest wines. I admit defeat. Here is your prize. He handed Abba the wineskins. Well, now, Abba crowed, didn't I tell you? But come on in, Maljika, come in. I have been waiting with great anticipation to taste your wine. His appearance was pleasant. No one would call him handsome, but Chana would never be swayed by such shallow considerations as good looks. He wore his dark hair and beard trimmed short, and his broad face and nose looked slightly flattened, as if he had run into a wall as a child. But his ebony eyes looked kind, and his manner as they enjoyed the wine and the conversation was calm and peaceful, as if nothing ever rattled him. She thought of several outrageous things she could say to test his unflappability, but kept them to herself for her father's sake. As the evening progressed, Malkijah praised the date cakes Chana had made, complimented Abba on his beautiful home, and managed to find something charming and graceful to say to Chana and each of her sisters. By the time he thanked everyone for a lovely evening and prepared to leave, she couldn't find a single fault with him. Was he an excellent actor, or was he always this nice? Chana stood near the door as Malkijah said goodbye, and he paused to look into her eyes for a long, unnerving moment. I hope we'll have the opportunity to meet again, Chana, he said. Then he smiled, showing his perfect teeth, and left. There, that wasn't so bad, was it? Abba said. Of course not. He was very pleasant and charming, but I'm just not ready to court anyone yet. Please understand, Abba. He rested his hands on her shoulders. Don't let grief become a way of life, my little Chana. Don't let it define your days and quench your spirit. From the time you were a little girl, you were always so happy, wearing flowers in your hair, or a bright scarf, or pretty sash. And you used to carry joy around with you like a basket of diamonds sparkling in the sunlight. Now you carry ashes. You were my happy little bird, singing so sweetly. But now you have allowed your grief to lock you in a cage. I only wish I knew how to open the door and set my little bird free again. Tears filled Chana's eyes as her father pulled her into his arms. I wish I did too, Abba, she mumbled into his wide chest. I wish I did too. All right, that is the end of chapter 2 in the book of On This Foundation. I hope you all are making the connections. What a description. Exactly, Delia. Exactly. The face and the nose, looking like he had run into a wall as a child. What a thing. Sporting instrumental grief. You know, a lot of people do that. All me. Yeah. It's almost like wearing grief like a badge of honor. Some people do that for a very, very, very long time. Because you see, guys, grief is not something like you can just get up and shake it off. And remember back in those days, those people, they had like a year. You will have a year to grieve, 1 year to grieve. And I'm not so sure the Jewish people go by that still, but I know that their one of their rules would be that you grieve for a year when your spouse passes. And after that year, you are allowed to start dating again, but not before that time. So here her father was telling her, it's been a year since Yitzhak died, Chana. It's time for you to loosen up now. You used to be such a happy little girl. You used to be full of life and jovial and everything. And ever since Yitzhak died, you have like crawled into a shell. You are not as bright and flowery as you were before. And he's encouraging her like fathers do. He's encouraging her to just let loose, let go of the grief, because Yitzhak ain't coming back. He's dead. He's not going to come back. So hindering your life's progress by grieving over something that is lost, that will never come back, it's just like you're wasting your life because you're not enjoying the moment. You can put the time on grief. That is ridiculous. Exactly. Exactly. But that's their tradition. They have put a time on the grief. So you can't be grieving after such a time. It's such a long time. The husband is dead already, buried already, or cremated, whatever the case may be. He's no longer here and he's never going to come back. So just accept that that is what it is and move right along. But the dad just here to see her sad. Yeah, the dad here to see her sad because he wants her. He hates to see her sad, but also he wants her to be married. He wants her to be married, and it's their custom. Remember now, she's what, 23? Because they're all close in age. So she's like 23 now. That's old. That would have been old in their tradition for you not to have been married already. So I guess he's just trying to live up to custom. And he knows that people in town are going to start asking, why doesn't she have a husband? You know, people are. They're going to start asking. And he doesn't want to be put in that uncomfortable position too many times to be answering why his daughter is not yet married. Okay? So, all right, guys. You all know it's an hour of reading a day. Keep the dunsets away. So Something like that. So before I understand what is going on here, if he doesn't get her married, he cannot marry the rest of his daughters because it's the oldest daughter that's supposed to be married first. Exactly. The oldest daughter have to be married first. And he has found himself in a very prickly spot because their mom has died. That was his wife. So he is without a wife. Um Chana is the oldest of the three daughters, and she is without a husband. She's not married. So somebody needs to get married. Somebody needs to get married. Yeah, so that's what the father is determined to find somebody for Chana, but Chana ain't having it. But I don't know, guys. What y'all think is going to happen? I am thinking that she's going to end up liking this boy, this young, not boy, this young man. I think she's going to end up liking him. He might be the one that didn't get away. Yeah, I think she might end up marrying this guy. I'm not going to read the book ahead of you all. I'm going to be learning what the book is saying at the same time you all are learning. I'm not going to read ahead. I don't like to do that. I think that would be cheating. So tomorrow morning when we come back here, we are going to be continuing the read of that book, chapter 3. We'll read chapter 3, and we will also read another chapter of the Bible to see if we can sort of make the connection between the two. So that is going to be, my friends. I'm already woozy. She already like him. She's just not ready to make that plunge. Exactly. You think that too, Delia? Yes, I'm thinking. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. But with these novels, you're thinking one day and boops, the author just take you to another place. But I think they are going to. I can't wait. I can't wait to read the rest of it. But we will continue reading this book tomorrow and making it our connections with the book of Nehemiah. Until then, I want to say thanks to everybody who came into the live. I hope you all hit that like button once you came into the live. I want to say thanks to each and every one of you. Cad and Delia. Oh, not the real deal. I think Joseph is here too. Is Winsome here, Joseph? I don't know if Winsome is here, but to everybody who is here, I want to say thank you so much for coming. I hope you all enjoyed the short version of the live. Once again, I want to say thank you all so much. I'm going to get me some rest now. And this is your girl Trev from Trevestance, where your journey matters. Have yourselves a great day, guys. We will talk later.